Now, Mr. Jarnal Singh was there, and I don't think he's going to be taking many notes.
But I can't really recall any of the details of what was discussed. I'm afraid it was a long time ago, and I just can't recall the details. I can't recall if he was in that meeting. I don't recall being asked to take notes in that conference. And I haven't been able to locate any of my own notes from that conference.
What a shame.
I have no recollection of taking notes in that meeting.
Do you have no recollection of shredding being mentioned?
No, I don't recall that. I have no recollection. I don't recall that, but I don't recall those discussions. I don't recall when this note was first provided to me. I don't recall any.
No, Mr. Parsons, you're a lawyer, you were heavily involved, and you had a brain. Mr. Parsons, on the contrary, I'm going to suggest that you didn't make any mistakes at all, and that what you did, I mean, there were errors of judgment, obviously. There were very serious departures from standards that ought to have applied, but that what you did was deliberate, it was clear-sighted, it was ruthless.
Sorry, you asking me to comment on that? Yeah. I'm a lawyer acting for Post Office. As a lawyer, it's my responsibility to defend their interests. For a large part of my engagement by Post Office, my instructions were that they considered the Horizon system to be a reliable system, and therefore I defended it along those lines.
And that was the mantra, that was the creed. But you could see that that fundamentalist approach, you must have seen that that fundamentalist approach had yawning gaps in it. But you didn't confront your client about that, did you?
I don't think it's fair to characterise it that way. I think from the start, back when I began, which was mid-2013, the group that I was working with had in their mind that there could be another version of events out there. They believed Horizon was a reliable system, but they were open to the possibility of it not being.
They were open to the possibility?
They were open to the possibility of it, and that is why they decided, in my view, to open up a mediation scheme to allow sub-postmasters to raise those issues.
You know perfectly well why the mediation scheme was set up. You must have gathered that it was Paula Vennell's idea. We've been lumbered with this liability by the Royal Mail Group. Let's try and tie it all up and get rid of it as cheaply as possible and avert the risk of a class action. That's the whole point. It was grudging, it was insincere, it was cynical.
No, I think it's fair to say that Post Office believed the Horizon system worked, and therefore they believed they were in the right position. But at the same time, the mediation scheme was set up, as much as I could see, with a genuine attempt to understand the complaints of the sub-postmasters and, if possible, resolve them.
Well, and then why did you say, and there's no need to go to the email because it's already been canvassed by counsel to the inquiry, why did you say that you didn't think that there was any prospect of settling any of the cases through the mediation?
Well, as I explained yesterday, that email was sent before the scheme was fully developed, and there was an investigation phase built into it. And my expectation at the point at which they built the investigation phase in is that may give rise to new information which may cause Post Office to settle some cases. However, I accept there was a large delta between the parties, and that makes it difficult to settle.
But you say it was a view expressed before it was fully set up and worked out. But when you look at the history of the mediation scheme, it was a complete sham, wasn't it?
I don't accept that.
It ended in utter failure, didn't it?
I don't believe so. I think it did a lot of good work investigating 150 cases, and I don't have the statistics before me, but in a good number of cases, settlements were reached.
I want to go back now to, very briefly, to the 9th of September 2013. And just help us, please. I don't quite understand your evidence. What are your memories of that consultation that took place at 2 Bedford Row?
I recall there was a consultation. I can recall being in 2 Bedford Row chambers in the room, but I can't really recall any of the details of what was discussed.
Or is it that you don't want to, Mr. Parsons?
I'm afraid it was a long time ago and I just can't recall the details.
A long time ago, of course, but let's not forget the context. I mean, you were involved in arranging that consultation together with Mr. Matthews, weren't you?
Primarily it was Mr. Matthews, but I accept that.
Yeah. And it was a very, very serious problem that you had, because you had the coalescing of the Second Sight interim review and then the revelation, of course, of Gareth Jenkins and the Clark advice. You were made aware of the problems with Gareth Jenkins, you say, from about the 8th of July, and you read the Clark advice on the 17th of July. Correct?
Correct.
Right. So there must have been quite a lot of expectation and anticipation. I mean, how is the great man, Mr. Altman, going to get us out of this mess? You must have been thinking like that. I mean, you did want to advance in your profession, didn't you?
As I've said before, I wasn't advising on the criminal side, but it's fair to say I was interested in to understand what Brian's advice was going to be.
I'm sure you were interested. And why were you interested?
Because it was a serious issue.
Yes, and that serious issue would have impacted with the civil cases that you were trying to keep at bay.
I didn't see it that way at the time.
You didn't?
Though I recognised there was a crossover between sub-postmasters who have been criminally convicted and the civil claims they might then subsequently bring.
Are you really saying to the chairman of this inquiry that you didn't see it that way at the time?
It wasn't the way I was thinking about matters.
Well, we'll come to that, but let's just concentrate on who was there. Can I take it that you were the most junior person in the room?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Jarnal Singh was there, and I don't think he's going to be taking many notes. Then there was Susan Crichton. She was general counsel, rather too senior, perhaps. There was Roderick Williams. Was he scribbling?
My general recollection of Rod is he was someone who made notes. I can't recall if he was in that meeting.
And you would recognise his handwriting?
Maybe.
Maybe. Mr. Clark was there, Mr. Bowyer was there, Mr. Smith was there. We know that Mr. Smith was writing notes and then he typed them up. Your partner was there, Mr. Matthews. You, however, were the senior associate. You would have been the deputed note taker, wouldn't you?
I don't recall being asked to take notes in that conference. I haven't been able to locate any of my own notes from that conference.
How, you haven't?
We've had a look.
What a shame. I wonder where they went to.
Well,
Mr.
hang
Parsons.
on. He hasn't accepted that he made notes, Mr. Henry.
You've looked for you say you've looked.
We've tried to locate my old notebooks.
So would you have been doing it onto a computer or would you have been actually writing it out?
I suspect back at that time I would have taken notes on paper.
Right. I mean, it's not an invariable practice, but often the most junior person in the room, the senior associate in your case, would be the note taker, because they're the least involved in the discussions and they are more or less observing events, and so therefore they are there to take an assiduous note. Are you saying that you have no recollection of note-taking?
I have no recollection of taking notes in that meeting.
Right. I mean, obviously you would have wanted to have been diligent and you would have wanted to have impressed, wouldn't you?
Well, that time, it impressed who?
Well, your partner and the other people in the room. I mean, you were a senior associate. Presumably you had designs on partnership.
Well, at that time, Gavin Matthews was the partner in the room. I knew him well, and as I explained, he was leading on that line of work.
Right, well, I want to come, please, to those notes, because I'm going to suggest that the ones that were preserved by your firm were sanitised. You've already been taken to the point that there is no mention of shredding. Do you have no recollection of shredding being mentioned?
No.
There's no mention of other Misras crawling out of the woodwork. Do you remember an expression of that kind being used by leading counsel?
I don't recall that.
No. It's a rather unfortunate expression, isn't it?
I don't really have a view on it.
You surely, are you saying that you have no recollection of that?
I have no recollection of that.
No mention of a direct question posed by your partner, Gavin Matthews, should we apologise to Seema Misra, and leading counsel saying, I wouldn't.
I don't recall that.
And curiously at all, no mention at all whether in the circumstances there should be prompt disclosure to Mrs. Misra of the discreditable conduct and breach of court duties of Gareth Jenkins.
If that's what the minute says, that's what the minute says, but I don't recall those discussions.
No, I'm saying that there is no mention of it at all. And in a case, surely, Mr. Parsons, in a case where the Post Office has relied upon Mr. Jenkins as to the efficacy of the Horizon system, they would be bound to disclose material which undermined his status as an expert witness, wouldn't they?
That was a matter for the criminal lawyers to advise on.
No, Mr. Parsons, you're a lawyer. You were heavily involved, and we'll see how heavily you were involved when I ask you further questions about this in the instruction of Mr. Altman. And you had a brain. I put it to you again. In a case where the Post Office has relied on Mr. Jenkins as to the efficacy of the Horizon system, they were bound to disclose material to Mrs. Misra which undermined his status as an expert witness.
That's what I understand the position to be from the criminal lawyers.
Yet there is no mention at all in the minutes, no mention at all of that being discussed. Do you find that odd?
Yes, I do find that odd, given that that was probably one of the key issues that was under review at that point in time.
Yes. Now, I want to come, please, to a document that you sent under cover of an email, which we don't need to get up, but just for the sake of the record, it's POL 000219991, and you sent it to Mr. David Oliver and Mr. Chris Ojard, and it was in connection with Linklaters being approached. And the document that I want to put up is POL 00006484. You're familiar with this document?
I'm aware of it.
And you were aware of it enough to forward it to David Oliver and Chris Ojard when they were considering the appointment of Linklaters. And I suggest that this shows what was really in the background all the time, which dictated the actions that you and others, Mr. Parsons, because it's not just you, that you and others took. So I want to go to the second bullet point. It is reported that leading counsel, Mr. Morgan, said the proposal to instruct an independent expert to prepare a report on the Horizon system is the highest risk response to the issue. What will it achieve? It will not be able to address any of the civil criminal cases dealt with under old Horizon, so that would be legacy Horizon. Will it seek to review particular cases? If so, which ones? So immediately there is identified the problem of pre-2010 cases. Do you agree?
Correct. Yes.
Next bullet point. Whatever the findings of the expert report, it will not resolve the problem. The Post Office will be damned if they do and damned if they don't. If the findings are that there are no issues with Horizon, people will see that as a whitewash, whereas if the findings are negative, that will open the floodgates to damages claims by SPMs who were imprisoned for false accounting, and Access Legal will start to pursue all the civil cases they are currently sitting on. Now, can you just help us, please? Who were Access Legal? Were they a funder?
No, I think they were shoesmiths by another name, weren't they?
I'm very grateful, sir. Thank you. So, shoesmiths, part of which shoesmiths was one firm, part of a conglomerate of solicitors' firms, a network of solicitors' firms. Is that right?
That's my recollection, yes.
Right. So if the findings are that there are no issues with Horizon, it's a whitewash, whereas if they're negative, floodgates. And that was a matter as well that you were aware of, that there was a dam. And behind that dam, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, perhaps, in fact, thousands of sub-postmasters who were the victim of unjust claims for compensation by the Post Office in respect of fictitious losses, and a lesser number, but still in their hundreds, of people who had either been convicted or had been, through force of circumstance, forced to plead guilty to, as the example is given there, false accounting.
So just as a point of context, this note is from June 2012. I didn't become involved until nearly a year later. I don't recall when this note was first provided to me. As to your question, I think it was always known by people at Post Office and the legal team that if Horizon was found to be fundamentally flawed, that would lead to a large and wide range of legal liabilities.
So whether you actually had personal knowledge of this note or not, it reflects, nevertheless, what would have been the concerns of the Post Office and also the concerns of Gavin Matthews, who was handling the Post Office account.
I think it's a almost natural consequence. If the IT system was found to be fundamentally flawed, there would be a wide range of legal liabilities.
Yeah, and that's why I suggest you are part of the policy of keeping it all at bay. To put it in a nutshell, delay, deny, get rid of the judge if you have to, but keep it all at bay. That was part of the policy that you signed up to at Bond Dickinson.
I don't accept that. When I began in 2013, the instructions I had is that Post Office believed the system was reliable. Second Sight had just concluded their interim review and found that there was no systemic problem. The basis on which we operated was that understanding. That understanding is obviously wrong, but it wasn't understood to be wrong at the time.
Now, do you remember when I asked you to consider your mindset when you went to that consultation on the 9th of September 2013 about whether you had concerns about floodgates and civil claims if criminal prosecutions were undone? And you said it wasn't operating in your mind at the time. There's no need to get it up, but you do remember that not that long after that, on the 8th of October 2013, you made a presentation to the Sparrow Working Group, didn't you?
I may have done.
Well,
help me with
you were taken to it yesterday. If need be, if you would like to see it again, we'll get it up on the screen. It's POL 000 22002, and it's page 14 of that document. Mr. Blake took you to it, and it was, and I think it's page 14. I do hope I'm right about that. Yes, there it is. Horizon inaccurately records data, transactions, recommendations, threshold of proof before offering a remedy. Very clear proof of technical defect in Horizon. Risks. The Post Office should be slow to concede that Horizon has any technical faults. I thought you were saying they thought it was robust.
They believed at that time it was a reliable system. It had obviously at that point in time already disclosed the 3 known bugs at that point in time. As I accepted yesterday, I think the bar that is set there on reflection is now too high.
But look what you say. To do so could open up the floodgates to a large number of claims. They must have been within your knowledge. You must have known that they were behind the dam.
As I said before, if it was always known to me, and I suspect others at Post Office, that if there was found to be a fundamental problem in Horizon that affected a large number of sub-postmasters, then that would open them up to a large number of claims.
And then, of course, it would be, you put it in terms like this, it will be almost impossible to reverse this position if conceded. I'm going to use the term domino effect. If the pin comes out of the grenade, then you can't predict where the shrapnel is going to end up.
The concern at this time was that there was some underlying fault in Horizon that was causing a wide range of losses that could explain the sub-postmaster's concerns. Now, we had no evidence of that at the time, and that's what we were concerned to understand, and that's what that's a reference to.
Did you like Second Sight?
On a personal level, yes.
We've got 15th of February 2016, you to Mr. Burke, Mr. Underwood, Roderick Williams, copy Daniel Fawcett. Patrick, Mark, Roderick, for your information below, Dan found this in the SS emails. It looks like Second Sight feeding questions to Alan for use with MPs. Who was, then if we scroll up, we can see that Mr. Fawcett has got access, scroll down, I do apologise. We can see that Mr. Fawcett has got access to, for example, emails from Chris Hollyoake to Ian Henderson, Ron Warmington. Who is Daniel Fawcett?
He's one of the lawyers at Womble Dickinson.
And was he junior to you or of the same? You were a managing associate at the time, I think.
Scroll up, please, so I can see the date. I would have still been a managing associate then. I think I was made up to partner on the 1st of May 2016.
So how did you get hold of these Second Sight emails?
At the end of the mediation scheme, Second Sight was asked to return all its emails to Post Office for safekeeping.
Was there any confidentiality implied in the return? In other words, that they were, returned, but nevertheless remain confidential?
I don't recall any.
Right. So this is after they've left the scheme. What were you trying to do? Accumulate dirt on them?
No, it was just an observation I'd made to others at Post Office, As I explained yesterday, one of the concerns I had about Second Sight is I felt that they were leaning too much in favour of the sub-postmasters and had lost some of their neutrality. I think I probably forwarded it because that email seems to be evidence of that point.
Right. And who instructed you to do this? I say you, of course it was done by Mr. Fawcett, but you're forwarding his product. Who was instructing you to do this?
Sorry, to review Second Sight's emails? Do you mean?
Yes.
I can't recall the context here. I'm just looking at the subject line, which says poll DSARS SS docs. If I remember, there was a period around 2015, 2016, where Post Office received a lot of data subject access requests from postmasters. So it may have been they were being reviewed in that context.